Is it possible to separate the stories of the past with what we are seeing in the present? Hello everyone and welcome to Movie Reviews by Josh. My name is Josh Terry, your source for insights on the latest and greatest and not so greatest movies. And today I'm going to be talking about Detroit, which is based on the true story of the Detroit riots in 1967. So Detroit comes to us from Kathryn Bigelow, who was the director of Zero Dark 30, and she did The Hurt Locker, and years ago she did Point Break, but that's not really relevant here because Detroit's much more along the lines of kind of these newer kind of dramatic based on true stories. Was Point Break based on a true story? I'm not sure. Anyway, enough levity. Detroit is very intense. It is an incredible visual experience. The style that Bigelow uses, a lot of handheld, grainy footage. Basically, the first half of the movie, maybe first third of the movie, she's kind of setting up the context of these riots. Basically, there is a police raid on an after-hours illegal nightclub, and as all the people are arrested for that, a riot breaks out with some bystanders, and that leads to several days worth of these horrific riots in Detroit where the city is burning and there's just chaos, and the National Guard is called in, and it's just nuts. And Bigelow's portrayal of this is just really something to see. I mean, there are plenty of good reasons to see this movie. I would say that one of the biggest for me, though, is just the cinematic experience of watching it, especially over the first third when she's kind of setting up the context. Because once the stage is set for the riots, she eventually zeroes in on the story of a handful of people who wind up at a hotel called the Algee one evening. And essentially what happens is one of the guests at the hotel tries to pull a prank on some of the nearby National Guardsmen, and he pulls out this starter pistol and fires it out at one of the top windows. Of course, the police, the National Guard, everybody descends on this hotel, and there is this huge, intense standoff and interrogation scene where primarily 3 Detroit cops and a local security guard, played by John Boyega, are trying to find out what happened, who's responsible, and things get intense, things get violent, things get deadly. So Detroit is a very good movie. It's also just really emotionally exhausting and even maddening to watch as the cops get progressively more and more angry and more violent. Elements of racism begin to emerge at the same time. Nobody who is being interrogated says anything about the starter pistol. And so there's this kind of weird cause and effect where you can kind of see where this leads to this, which leads to this, which leads to this, and the decision making, the poor decision making, and the poor reaction to the decisions having been made, and all these things just kind of compound, and it's just really startling to watch. So one of the things that's going to make Detroit a little bit more memorable is its application to today, because it's really hard to watch Detroit, the movie, and not to think about Detroit, the city, the bankrupt city, which is having all kinds of troubles today. It's also hard to watch it without thinking about the controversy between the police and, inner city crime and all these kind of different things. And so I think the movie, to its credit, gives you enough information that people are going to be able to take a lot of different things from this, and you can interpret it in a lot of different ways. I think I just kind of leave that to the viewer and to the audience, and I think it's probably smart that they did that. So Detroit is rated R. The violence, actually, it's intense and it's brutal. It's not terribly graphic. I mean, there's definitely blood and there are shootings and things like that, but it's not gratuitous, it's not exploitative, nothing like that. The profanity is pretty frequent and pretty regular, so it's definitely earns its R rating. I wound up giving Detroit 3 stars out of 4. At the end of the movie, they actually admit that a lot of the story is kind of dramatized and recreated from bits and pieces of testimony, and so probably still have to kind of take things with a grain of salt, but overall, still a worthwhile viewing experience. Thanks as always for watching. This has been Movie Reviews by Josh. Be sure to subscribe and keep your notifications on so you can see our new videos as soon as they're posted. And thanks as always to Rocket Gator for their continued loyal, devoted, and endearing sponsorship.